Welcome back to PodX. I know you guys are going to love this one because this is someone who I'm really excited to finally meet, and I'm so grateful this is happening. So this was supposed to happen a long time back, but then we had a lot of delays, and I'm really excited. So our guest for today is Bilal Siddiqi. He's the author of the best-selling book Bard of Blood, a spy novel which was later adapted into a show by Red Chillies Entertainment, which he wrote when he was 19. He has also co-written. He's also the co-author of the book *The Kiss of Life*, which he wrote with Emraan Hashmi, which is one of the most heart-telling books that I've ever read. Bilal is also the author of *Stardust Affair* and has recently launched a book, *The Phoenix*. Bilal Siddiqui is also a screenwriter. Today, I'm excited for him to share his story of discovery, passion, and work ethic. Thank you so much for being here, Bilal.
Thank you for having me on this podcast, Ayush. Thanks a lot. Glad we can
So,
do this.
Firstly, I just finished reading *The Kiss of Life*. In fact, yesterday I finished it, and I started day before yesterday, and it was so gripping that I think I finished. I read like half the book. I think more than half the book in the first day, and the second half I finished it. So I just want to tell you that's really one of the most beautiful and heart-touching books that I read ever in my life, and it's one of my favorites now. So, but how did you like come to get to write that? Because you were so young, and then how did Imran sir approach you? What just happened? Tell us about that behind that story.
So I'd actually gone to meet Imran because of Hussain Zaidi, who is my mentor and who kind of helped me put together my first point. Hussain sir, who also published Kiss of Life along with Penguin and Bharat Bharat, was in conversation with Imran to write the experiences that Imran went through with his son. His son battled cancer at a really young age. I think he was 4 or 5 at that time. He developed a Wilms tumor, cancer that surrounds the kidney. And when we had met him, his son had just won the battle against the disease. So I had gone with the sensor to be part of a conversation with Imran where he was uh, still in two minds about doing the book. But by the end of that conversation, he was uh, really keen to take it forward and write his experiences because he knew it could help a lot of other people as well. Just documenting what he went through, and it's a book that kind of gives you a basic understanding of what cancer is and do your bit to probably prevent it. Do the best you can. There's no 100% cure in that sense. But outside of that, it's also a story about not losing hope in the face of adversity, right? And that was a book that was extremely important for Imran to write, and he needed someone to help him in that process. So that's kind of where I stepped in. He was kind enough to give me the opportunity to tell that story of his. So that's how it happened. It happened over a few meetings and sessions where we discussed how the book should be structured and what exactly it is that he wants to tell. Then we reached a point where I think we were ready to write it. Then it happened.
You know, I'm sorry to interrupt, but when I was reading this book, it is the way you wrote it is really amazing because I think one of the chapters towards the end, when I literally started crying because when there was a part which you explained so well that Ayan goes to school and then he sees his friends and his friends start talking about it and then he proudly says that I had cancer and I battled it out. And you can see that strength and courage, but the way you wrote it, I could feel I was Ayan at that moment. And that also got down tears down my eyes. That's how I felt. It was like sometimes these books can give you a real connection. Not all books, but this one I could feel that connect. I could visualize it and I could feel every emotion. Like that is how good it was for
It is
me.
an extremely emotional tale. It was a personal. Yeah, it is an extremely emotional tale, and it was rather personal for Imran, and it was an experience that was still fresh in his mind when we sat down to write the book. And Ayan is an extremely spirited child. He is extremely strong. He is a great kid to be around. Just his positivity is infectious. But At that point, like you said, Imran himself did have moments where he was, because recounting those incidents was not going to be an easy task. So I think the book was written with the intentions to uh, bring about certain change in anyone's lifestyle. Whoever, even if one out of 50 people who have read it have made even one or two changes that have been suggested in that book, I think it's a success in some form. And of course, people were emotionally invested in Ayan and Imran's story. Important thing for the book to succeed. So I think that has happened, and it remains one of the most special things I will ever work on. I think piece of life. It is an important book, even to me personally.
That thing also reminds me, your first book, which you wrote, was when you were 19, which is Bar of Blood, which is one of the most amazing shows again. So, how did you get into that writing space? So, what just happened behind that?
I was studying at St. Xavier's. Did BMN, so it's a mix of journalism and art. And I studied some amount of journalism, and it was extremely keen to get into that uh, line of work. And at that point, Hussain Zaidi, who is a crime reporter and is a very famous non-fiction writer and also a novelist now, he had come to our college, Xavier's, for a guest lecture. And by the end of the lecture, I mean, the whole hall was packed. A lot of people wanted to watch him talk. Is celebrated all over the country, Black Friday and Don't Be to Dubai and all these books. And I was a fan of his. And so when he came to our college to work, to talk about his work, uh, at that point, all of us were completely spellbound, and we really wanted to um, get an opportunity to talk to him and stuff like that. But by the end of that conversation, he actually extended an opportunity for everyone to assist him on his next. And I remember a lot of students, somewhere around 30, 40 of them applying to do that, maybe more even. And I was one of those. And we eventually met Vicenza after a process of shortlisting that our college did. And I think there were 20 of us by the time we met him. And I started learning how to write in those couple of years that I spent working up close with him on his books. Phase that he asked me if I was writing something of my own. And I had developed the character that appears in Part of the protagonist. And I had kind of written a few chapters with that premise in mind. But I never thought it would materialize because it's something I wrote for fun. And I knew I wanted to write, I just didn't know how to go about it. But having worked with Hussain sir, I suddenly found this inroad into the world of publishing, which he opened that door up for me. And he asked me to send him whatever I'd written. And I did send it to him. And I think for a few weeks, he didn't say anything about it. So I thought he really hated it, so I didn't bring it up myself. But at some point, he actually came back to me and said that he sent those chapters forward. And Penguin, the publishing house, is interested in the book. But because I was 19, they wanted to know if I can actually complete the entire novel and write it well enough for them to publish. So it kind of became a moment. So it became a challenge that I had to kind of take on. And it was something that I was extremely driven towards. So yeah, I just thrashed away the first 4 5 chapters I written and started afresh. And along with the censor's guidance, I managed to develop, I think, what is a decent novel. Obviously, when I read it now, there's so many things I would have done differently. Uh, but yeah, that's how I kind of stepped into the world of writing.
Okay, so actually, I had three questions which came up in these short spans. So I'll start with the first one. Why do you think there's an age barrier which exists in every industry? And do you think it's like changing or something? Because anytime we're going somewhere new, the age barrier is always there. Younger ones aren't allowed so much in. while you broke that age barrier and got it?
See, there's a natural in- inclination to not take someone who's young seriously immediately, and it's fair enough. But if you're persistent enough, and if the person who isn't taking you seriously enough does manage to see your potential and see that there is something that can be done with XYZ person, an opportunity won't be denied. So, for in my taking my example, when I wrote Bard, they did read it and they did like it, and they did realize in 19, but they did not want to treat me. So they did give another chance and a better chance. They said, write maybe a little more and bring it to us, which is perfectly fair, I think, from standing in there, looking at it from their point of view. So I believe it does exist, but also the whole thing is that there are people who are getting a lot more receptive towards younger people because, to be honest, that's where that's the group of people who are the most competitive right now. They are also fairly talented. They are driven. I think it's important to, if you want to get a head start into any career that you choose. I was, I was driven, but I managed to find that path luckily enough. A few people uh, don't get it as easy as I did, but maybe I think with time, patience, and of course age, there is a lot of things. There's a flip side to it. If you start something too young, there's always a chance that you may not um, be at par with those who have been doing it for a while. And that's fair enough. So I don't think the age barrier really exists in a way that it ends your chances, but it's there. And it's there like several other societal barriers. So it's one of those things that you overcome, and if you can't overcome, you just wait till you've crossed a certain age.
I was reading this really interesting thing. So, which is till 2060. So, we have the maximum amount of youth in our country. So, India has a maximum amount of youth. That's why we have a lot of progress. That's one of the reasons. So, I was reading the study which said till 2060 we will have the maximum amount of youth, and then slowly it will start declining because now people are kind of reducing. So first, every family had four children. Then it went to now that every family almost has two children. But now people are adopting towards having one. So I was reading the study, and until 2060, we will have the greatest opportunity to grow. And then 2060 will slowly start dropping because of the lack of population and the lack of youth, which so many other countries are facing right now because they lack youth in it.
I don't know that. I guess we need to get to work in other spheres of our life as well. We can't let the youth drop.
Well, another really beautiful thing which you said was you joined Saitsa, and you were trying something new, and you hadn't really figured out what Bard was. You just had a rough idea in my mind, but that's actually most of the things. So most of the people don't really start anything, but you start figuring out onwards in the journey. For me, like the podcast, I didn't know I was going to do a podcast or anything. So I'll tell you one funny story. I started with making very fluffy motivational videos with fake accents on YouTube. So that is where I actually started from. And I never thought I'd be doing podcasts. Slowly, I started doing new things and experimenting and figuring out on the way. And that's one thing which you said really amazing, that you figure it out on the way.
Yeah, I think it's a part of everyone's journey uh, in some form. No one exactly ends up are going to end up at the beginning of their career, and it's something that you embrace. But obviously, you should not let it uh, take you behind a few steps. It has to be in a certain direction, and you have to follow a certain trajectory. Uh, which, like you said, you started in a certain way and you ended up in a way that you're happier with, and hopefully it'll even go higher from there. Same with me, and I hope my stepping into writing books to working on another bunch of things right now only takes me higher. So it's about trying to move forward and not stay stuck in the same place for too long.
Right.
and definitely no, not go a few steps backwards.
So, what are your future plans then? If you could tell us, because I know you're a screenwriter also, and your time is divided between writing novels and the screenwriting career. So, what do you see yourself doing in the next 10 years? What are your achievements?
For my long-term goal, I'm pretty certain that I want to direct because medium that excites me a lot. Um, that's something that I always have at the back of my head, and it's something that I want to pursue. And I'm trying to figure out how to move in that direction by educating myself enough about filmmaking and all of that. But as of now, immediately what I'm doing is I've uh, been writing something which is it's a film. It's for a streaming platform. It's taking some time, but hopefully that turns out well. And the other time, just ideating on what could be my next book. So once I'm done writing the script, I'm going to jump onto another book because I really enjoy writing novels. So I think I don't want to stop that in pursuit of something else.
So I wanted to ask you this question, which is, do you think, so if you look at other countries, their books are actually very widely popular. Sadly, in our country, we don't really read too many Indian authors. So do you think that will be changing and the Indian books will be having a global impact, going on a global scale? Something like maybe like Harry Potter or something, which is read by everyone.
See, that's partially true. There are a bunch of Indian books that have really traveled far and wide. But in order to be at a certain world stage, it has to be a certain kind of subject, and it also has to be of a certain caliber. Uh, but having said that, for books to succeed internationally, books have really succeed within the country itself. And for that, you need more people reading, and that's not something that's in the writer's control. There are so many. See, I don't know the percentages and the numbers of it, but I know for sure that there aren't as many readers as there should be, and probably we don't have a culture of picking up books and reading that as often as we should be doing that. So if that changes and books do grow actually in the market within our country, that gives rise to many more authors who are exciting and who can enter the market, and who knows who will break out and reach a world stage. So it's a cycle actually. If there are no readers or the readers are accustomed to a certain kind of book which is mediocre, then they're only going to get more of that. So in order for writing to change, some of the reading has been, but there should be a little more. But that's my two bits on it. I could be completely off the mark also.
I think reading should be increased. Even sometimes when I look back, my reading has actually decreased. The amount of time I spend on reading ever since, I think more people are now spending time on OTT platforms like Netflix and Prime, and we're watching more shows. While, when I was 10 or 12, I remember that magic of reading a book. Because, so what used to happen was I used to turn my room lights off so that my mother doesn't know. And I used to read under the night lamp, and it would be so fun because I would go hours and hours reading. And now, what has happened around me and with me sometimes is I see now people, instead of going hours and hours of reading books, they're just watching hours and hours of shows. So if that can change, I think it would be really impactful.
See, the thing is, you don't have to leave one to do the other. Reading should be part of your plan. And I know where people who spend that amount of time something come from instead of reading, because reading is a little tougher and requires a little more effort than watching something that's readily available. Also, a story on screen is told faster than perhaps some people who want to read the same thing. So I get where all of those arguments will come from, and they do exist, and there's a fair amount of truth to that side of the argument as well. But I believe that reading should always be part of people's timetables. Even if people read, let's say, 3 pages every 3 days, that's still more than they already are doing. And it's just that sort of a thing, you know. But again, you can't can't fight against gravity. If that's how the trends are shifting, then you have to find ways as writers or everything to adapt. So that's what I believe in.
But do you still read?
Sorry.
Do you still read, like, and if you do, how
Yeah, yeah,
often
yeah.
do you
Of
read
course
and
I
how do
read.
you get?
See, you can't be a writer without reading. So I have to read uh, as part of it being what I'm doing professionally. And also, I love reading. It's not that like, and I love watching stuff on Netflix and all as well. So it's about striking a balance. It's just about what you read at what point of time. There are a lot of books that sometimes I have a bad habit of starting several things at once, and I don't actually complete everything I read. But I don't stop reading. It is a part of my life. And try to complete a book a month at least. At least, my more. It was a lot more at one point, but I try to do at least one or two a month.
So for me, what has happened is actually the extremes. So if I find a book really interesting, I will go all into it and finish it as fast as possible. And if I don't find it interesting, it'll take me like weeks and weeks and weeks. It'll keep on lagging. Like for me, The Kiss of Life, I finished it in 2 days. I remember I even messaged you actually when I read the first three chapters. I sent you a message that I finished the first three chapters and all. So that was how I finished. I finished it in one shot.
Yeah.
But I'm still trying to strike a balance between the two. Like, some people have a habit of reading half an hour a day at night before sleeping or something like that. So that's what I'm trying to get into my schedule.
Yeah, whatever works. Yeah, whatever works. Different
No,
people have different schedules and ways of approaching it, but as long as they do it, everyone wins. There's no person who can read a book and come out stupider than he entered it. So
but okay. So now I want to ask you a bit of personal questions. Firstly, is how do writers make money? How do you all make money?
get a certain amount of money that arrives on signing the deal, and post that it depends on the sales of the book. But there is a guaranteed amount that you're going to make upon completion of the book. There's one way to earn money by writing it. Second is if your book lends towards an adaptation for film or TV or whatever, selling those rights to make the film or TV show or podcast even nowadays, get you a certain amount of money. And in India, unfortunately, writing novels is not as lucrative as writing films and television just yet. So that's another avenue that writers of books are actively pursuing in order to make money. You know, but I believe that the creative integrity of writing and your project remains the highest when you're writing a novel, because when you're doing it adaptation for film or screen, it's a larger team. It's not as close to the vision as you would have set out to accomplish. There are a bunch of people who come on it. They do have feedback, they have their points of view. So it becomes a combination of a lot of things that you may not like as well. But that's where there's a lot of money as well. So it's about striking that balance, which is why in a way I would continue to write books, because I can tell the story I want to tell freely without anyone giving that I don't agree with. But as far as professional screenwriting is concerned, it's a great zone to get into, and it's what I'm telling you is an off chance in case a project doesn't pan out the way it does. But in a larger sense of things, there is always a collaboration that could be healthy and could pay you well. So, that's another way writers earn. So, hope that answers your question. And I'm still trying to figure out how to.
But so when you said if your book is adapted into a movie or a show, you're getting a certain amount of money. So does the writer get the whole amount, or does the publishing house take the money, or is it split between you all or something?
Yeah, so sometimes the publishing houses do have a clause in your contract uh, where they get to keep a percentage of um, the revenue that's generated from a book deal. Um, but it depends on what you finally agree upon. None of it is set in stone. Yes, publishing houses do keep a percentage of what you want in terms of IP, which you eventually sell. So it just depends on the deal that you strike when you sit down to write a book with them. And I believe it's fair for them to ask for it, because if it wasn't a published novel, then instead you'd spend the time writing it as a script, and a script is sell. Even if it sells, it does not always get made. So there are those sort of problems. When it's a book, it exists in some legitimate form at least. So there are great pros towards doing a story as a book. But yes, to answer your question, yes, they do hold back the percentage sometimes.
And okay, so now my next question is, what do writers do with their money? What do you all do once you all make that money? What do you all do with it?
I don't know. What does anyone do with the money? Uh,
No, I mean like
they're not completely different from human beings, even though we behave that way. No, I mean, if you ask me what I do with it, I think I've saved a bunch of it. The other bunch I've spent on stupid things. Uh, but I mean, I buy a lot of stuff that I can actually do without PlayStation and all a lot. So any new game that interests me, I pick it up without looking at the price.
yeah, and I
That's
notice
something I do
also.
with my money.
Also, I noticed you travel a lot, which is that I don't know. So you spend your money for more traveling, and I think you're more inclined towards gaining experiences over people just having their money in the bank account and just having it stored. Rather, you're more open to learning new things and discovering new cultures and all. That's what I think I've noticed from your Instagram at least.
I think that comes with the age. Once I settle down, and it's going to all change. But it's that phase of life where if you do have a little money to spare and you can use it to gain experiences, like you said, why not use that? So that's the
So another personal question which I wanted to get into is, did the image of people around you change? Like, did people's perception about you change once your book was published and once there was a show being adapted and all? What happened after that?
what kind of people?
I mean, just people
And
around
which
you.
people are these? No, yeah, not really, because I've known my friends for way too long, and it's just this tight knit group of friends that I have, and we continue to do what we've always done, which is just meet, eat food, hang. Then nothing's changed as such. And honestly, it's not like I've achieved some crazy pinnacle of success. It's just a book. It's still professionally driven. It's not something that perceptions change, I think. But no one, but the people I know have always been close to me. It's just a bunch of friends who have always known since like I'm a kid, third standard or something. So it's nothing's changed really.
Even when I was reading your book, because of like Emraan sir said the same thing. Most of his friends aren't really from Bollywood, but they're still from his school and college friends.
I think yeah, those are friends that stay the longest, that stick around the longest. Those are the people you can bank on if something goes wrong. Spend all your time with them. I'm not someone who goes like making new friends and partying a lot. But I do, I do socialize a little bit, but it's just that core group of friends that we've always had that matter. So yeah.
And I think the right group of friends also matters. So I'll tell you this. Initially, I didn't have too many. I think till the ninth grade, I didn't have too many friends. Maybe I had friends. I was friends with everyone, but I didn't really have a circle. I think I was more of the person who would just have fun and all, not studying so much, not working so much. And then in the ninth grade, I got into this. Towards the end of ninth grade, I got into this friend circle, which had this perfect balance of striking work and fun. If you look at a lot of friend circles, it's only fun, or if you look at a lot of friend circles, it's only work. So when you find that friend circle that can strike a balance between both, it motivates you. Because what happened with me was I used to see them work, and I used to just be like, what am I doing over here? Why am I not working? Maybe even I should study, and that's how I started focusing more on my academics. Because you feel like the odd one out when everyone is focused on academics while having fun, while you're only having fun. So I started focusing more on academics also, and that balance came in my life. So I think that matters also.
Yeah. No, I think in my case, my mom brought in that balance because I never focused on academics with my friends. but, but yeah, you're right. It's about making the right friends, and if they're the wrong people, they are your people for the rest of your life. It's exactly that.
But how did writing impact you as your personality, on your inner self? How did writing, once you started writing, how did that impact you?
I feel I feel extremely happy that I'm able to do something I love for a living, and hopefully I can continue to keep doing it. Uh, but as far as impacting my personality is concerned, I don't think it's really changed me too much from what I am. Of course, because it's a profession now, it has to be taken much more seriously than it would have been taken as a hobby. But I'm not. I don't think it's changed me. It's not that what I've sat down to write has transformed me substantially. Except I think the only book that actually brought about some change in me was Imran's book because it was a true story about a real experience that was extremely touching. But outside of that, it's all fiction and it's all make believe. So nothing has. I don't think I would have been anything different had I not done this. I've still been same.
Right. So with this, I wanted to come to the next phase of the podcast, which was some questions that I had specifically, which we would ask writers. So do you have writer's block, like a mind block, and how do you deal with it if so you do have it?
You know, okay, so I try to fix a schedule for myself and this is something I'm trying recently, but I've not actually faced writer's block in the form that it's completely derailed my work because I try to be regular about it. And even when it's something that I'm not liking while I'm writing, I continue to do it, knowing that I can come back and fix it later instead of leaving it for another day into a cycle, of feeling and waiting for a wave of inspiration to strike. And I don't think that happens when you have to do it uh, as a part of your job. I think you have to allot time to it and attack it religiously. So writer's block for me so far hasn't created any problems. But if you commit yourself to writing your next number of pages a day, even if it's a page a day or 2 pages a day as a writer, then you're already tackling it. Pages you can come back later and fix it instead of not moving forward at all. So that's how I kind of look at it.
I think which you said about writing about. So I read somewhere that basically how people deal with writer's block is once you start writing out everything which is in your mind, the good and bad automatically comes out. So all the bad stuff comes out, and then your mind just clears out of its own. That's one of the ways. And you spoke exactly the same, something similar.
Yeah. Also, when I write something, I actually spend the most amount of time breaking things down before I get to writing it, if that makes any sense. So I know which chapter should deal with what. I know which part of a screenplay should have what happening in it. And I know it loosely. I don't know it's to the T, but I do know what's going to happen, and that continues to keep me moving. If I'm clueless and making things up as I go, then perhaps I'll face writer's block. But I try to chart it out fairly early before I actually get down to writing a story, writing a book or a show or a screenplay or whatever.
Okay, I just had to tell you this. So I know you. So you took a lot of effort. Like all writers take a lot of effort in organizing the way the chapters are written and all. But the thing is, I started Bard of Blood. Actually, I started watching it from the last episode. So I think I watched the eighth episode first. Then I went on to the second episode and third. So I accidentally skipped the first episode. And then again, I watched the whole episode, like eighth episode again, and I realized, oh, this is the same episode. And then I watched the first episode. But it was still thrilling, and somehow I managed to understand the whole story, even though I started from the eighth one. But it was amazing.
That's nice. I should try it out as well.
So, on an average, how long does it take for you to write a book?
Sorry, can you repeat that once more? I just lost you.
On an average, how long does it take for you to write a book?
Um, See, I don't. I'm not timing myself really, but it takes you about 6, 7 months to a year if you're regular at it. Because writing and by writing it, I don't mean the physical act of writing per se. Even as you go along, or breaking the story down, tracking what it is that you want to tell through the story. All of those things take time to kind of zero upon, and it should take a year at least, 6 months to a year. Of course, that's the kind of writing that I do. These are commercial fiction books. These are not the highest forms of literature you'll find out there. So obviously, it's not going to take you as much time as something that's really, meaningful and of a certain level of literary fiction. But for a book, a kind of book that I write, somewhere around a year.
Okay. And so I've noticed this. Sometimes writers actually put secret messages in their books. Do you do that? Do you like put secret messages through your books or something like that, which someone may like find out, or do you plan on doing it?
No, actually, I don't. I've not thought of it that way. Uh, I've not put any secret message for anyone. I don't want to give anyone that sort of importance because if that's in your book, and after some point of time that person stops, then you have a secret message for someone even you don't care about. So I don't want to do that sort of thing.
Another part, this is a separate phase completely now, which is, I think I spoke to you about the call. So, what are your thoughts on manifestation? Because obviously, you put an immense amount of work, but having a sense of belief in a higher source of power, manifestation always helps. And we were discussing this. So, just tell us your thoughts. The audience doesn't know about it, but
There are, I don't know if I'm the right kind of guy to ask about something that's as intangible as manifestation. There are people who probably know better about it. And with the right mix of hard work towards your goals and prayer and hoping that things work out for you. Uh, Very few, sometimes things fall into place, It's just about being persistent enough. And if uh, that's a version of manifestation, then so be it, because that's what's happened with me also. I really hope to write. I found opportunities that led towards this as a career. And eventually, things did for books. And at a fairly young age, I did not imagine I'd write them at the age I'm writing them at. I was always thinking maybe that before I die, I should write one book at least. even if it's not published. That was a fairly like realistic goal I had set myself. But when I realized that life is taking me towards a path of having this become a profession, I did my best to pursue it, and I did really hope for it to happen. But maybe that is manifestation. I don't know. Is it?
Yeah, and now you've written five bestseller books. One of them's already adapted into a show. I think there's a long way for you to come. It's going to be amazing. Like, I'm so glad I'm getting to do this with you at such an early stage. Because 20 years later, when I'll look at this, I'll be like, okay, there's so much. Because 20 years later, I think I'll have so much more to learn from you. Because you're a person who's
No,
constantly changing and learning.
even the opposite could be true. You know, maybe do the thing that's great in life, and you might be watching this, so it's great. You know, it just depends where life takes us. But having said that, as long as you're like sincere about your journey uh, and your goals, I think you will eventually reach where you set out to reach.
Yeah,
I
but I
don't think
just,
I've spoken this language before, though.
but I'm telling you this, you're
Friends are going to see
really
this and wonder what's happened.
No, but I'm telling you this, you're really undervaluing yourself because I'm telling you 20 years later, this is going to be huge. I'm going to be flexing around that I did a podcast with Bilal and it's going to be one of my biggest things. Because I can see that in your shows, I can see that in your writing. It's just the most, I can, like I told you, it's like the emotions I can connect with it, which I haven't really felt in too many books. It's very rare to find that in books. That's why.
Thank you for saying that. You're too kind. I hope what you're saying comes true. What else can I say?
It will, it will, it will. So, as growing up, which were your favorite novels or series? Like five favorite books or five favorite series which you've read?
Okay, so while growing up, I actually read the Tintin and Asterix novels, graphic novels. So count those as one. Uh, I read a whole series of books called written by lady Richmond Compton. She's written a book series of this character called William. So he's I think called William and his group of friends, and it's all misadventures. It's beautifully written. I don't think they're easily available, but they're great books. Whoever can get their hands on them can really read them now, and it's a laugh ride. Whoever reads that can really go far. Then the Harry Potter series, of course. So that's another. There's a third. Um, Fourth being uh, Godfather. I actually read very early in life, but that's too early. None of the series. The books written by the same writer, Mario Puzo. And then actually I read even the James Bond series very early. So that's where my love for
Spy thriller.
espionage, yeah, spy thriller started. James Bond and the Jason Bourne series. So yeah, those are the books I read very early on.
Okay, I'll tell you my five favorite series. From your books which you mentioned, I think I've only read Harry Potter. I've not read the other four. I think I'll give them a look. So, my favorite, I think, is
You
the
must.
most. And so, I'll tell you my favorite series which I read. I think this was when I read when I was 10 or 11. Have you read The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis?
Yeah. I read it as a kid. Yes.
Okay, so that book, I think I really love the way C.S. Lewis writes in his style because it makes me feel I'm a part of Narnia. And what happened was, I think I was still 10 back then when I read Narnia. And every animal, every stray dog which I was looking at, I was trying to talk to a stray dog. Every tree I'm looking at, I'm trying to find a portal to Narnia to get into. So that was one of my favorite books. Second, I think Harry Potter. Like you said, I really, really enjoyed Harry Potter. And I was till 11. I thought I was a slow student. So till 12, I was waiting for Hogwarts to send an invite. But that also never happened. And then
We
I
all
think, have
waited for
you,
that.
everyone waited for it.
By the
Yeah,
way,
even I,
even the Roald Dahl books, all of them are beautiful. Chocolate Factory and all. I read all of those
yeah,
also.
So I read those also.
Very lovely.
Did you ever get into Goosebumps? R.L. Stein books?
Yeah, I did. That crossed my mind, but I didn't feel they had any impact on me really. I mean, I know I get the charm, but I didn't fall for that.
Okay, so I enjoyed the R.L. Stein books, but there were these choose your scare books, which means below the
Yeah,
page there
yeah,
were
yeah.
options. So those were the books which I really enjoyed. I think I
Yeah, that
named
was
three,
fun.
and I think the last one which I would say is Famous Five. Have you read that? Enid Blyton?
I did. I didn't finish all of it, Secret Seven, Famous Five, and all, but I did read a few of them. Again, I didn't care for those. I never actually ended up liking them because I read. I read books like William and all, which also had a group of young kids getting into misadventures and all of that. So it just became a little repetitive. But obviously they are widely successful books, and a lot of sure they're great books and better than anything I might ever write. So sure.
Okay, so last two, actually, I was supposed to say only five, but I got two more in my mind. I had to ask you, have you read Percy Jackson books?
I started one, I didn't end it.
Okay, so I think when I was in the sixth, that was a whole lot of craze. Everyone used to bring Percy Jackson books in school and trade them and all. And so actually, books are not allowed in our school. I don't know why that rule is there, but the teacher caught us trading, and all the books were confiscated. After that, no one ever got those books, so we had to buy our own books and read them. But until sixth, we were doing that. And the last series which I want to talk about was 39 Clues. Have you read those?
Which one?
39 Clues.
No, I've not read.
Okay, so I'll just tell you a bit brief. It's like there's a huge wealth prize which has been in store by a person who passed away. Her name's Cahill something. I forgot her name. Her surname's Cahill. And there's this huge family which has been divided into four different groups and all that stuff. And they all have to solve clues to get the final prize, which is a huge amount of estate. And so each book is really gripping because these families they are trying to trying to defeat each other and also trying to win the prize and all. So and every book it ends in such a way that you have to read the next book. So that is what they did. So that was one of my books.
It's nice. I'll look it up, but I don't think I'll still read it because I think I crossed that age.
So would you recommend someone for your age to read?
See, it depends what you're in the mood to read. If it's fiction and it's thrillers, then there's Stephen King, there's Daniel Silva, there is Don Winslow. There are these great writers who write really, really fantastic thrillers. Um, Sometimes I pick up a non-fiction book and I read it. Like there's a book by Bob Iger, the Disney CEO, on his journey in Disney. Really inspiring. So it just depends, I pick up what I'm naturally inclined towards, like fiction, thrillers, and all of that. But sometimes there are books that uh, have nothing to do with my interest, but I pick them up and then I really end up liking them. So yeah,
But do you think if you would write a non-fiction book in the future, do you think you would write one? And if so, it would have an impact, or or some. Do you have a scientific invention or something which would come out? Okay, this question I'll explain it with a bit of background. So there's this author Jules Verne. He was a science fiction writer, and his books were really amazing. And I think the design of the submarine, the idea of submarine, actually came from his book. So he actually wrote the ideas of the submarine in his book, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And that it was a similar idea which was implemented in reality. So do you see yourself writing something in those form of books or something, which are going to be non-fiction but science fiction based, like?
I mean, as far as non-fiction is concerned, Imran's book is non-fiction, so maybe that counts as one non-fiction book. But In the near future, I don't see myself writing a non-fiction book until I am an authority on the subject that I'm writing about. I don't think people who are not well-known personalities in the field that they're writing about a non-fiction book about should be writing a book. Off the top of my head, no, I don't see myself doing either of these books in the immediate future. But who knows? If I do stumble upon something that only I can tell, then I might try. It depends on what point of life you're at, also, and when you sit down to write. That reflects in your work sometimes.
So I want to ask you this last question before we wrap up, which is what would be your advice to your younger self if you had to change? I don't think you would change, but what would be your advice?
Advice to my younger self would be, um, no, actually, I don't have a problem with myself. Okay, maybe it would, uh, I don't know, maybe it would be to like listen to what others say a lot more. I do get stubborn sometimes, so maybe that's one thing I would change. It's not damaged anything in my life yet, the stubbornness, and now I'm aware about it, so I can actively change some things. But I don't think I would change anything else as far as like my career graph is gone or all of that. So
And your last advice to anyone who's viewing this podcast, to the audience, what is your advice to them?
see, I can't advise people about uh, how they should be living their lives and all, but I would just ask them to write because, and not just for the selfish reason that it helps writers like me, but also it's something that uh, can collectively uplift society. If you have well-read people around you, like I said earlier, no one uh, comes out of a book stupider than they went in. You always come out a little smarter, even if it's a little fraction. So you just read, And if you're a writer and you want to step into writing, then you absolutely must read and find your voice as you go through a bunch of books. But yeah, read. That's the only advice I can give.
There's also a quote that there's no difference if you don't read. There's no difference between you and someone who's illiterate. Like if they don't read.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a little slight difference if you are educated and you can speak the language and you can add the numbers up. But there's some insights and just nuggets of wisdom that you can't get through a formal education alone. So you should read, I guess.
Right. So this was actually a really amazing, powerful podcast for me. I got to learn so much from this, and I'm sure we'll be having you in the future again. And I'm super excited.
Yes.
So thank you so much for being a part today.
Thank you so much for making me part of this. Very good talk.